Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Core State Government Capital here at the RBF Koror. My name is Jolene Ngoriak. I'm the Chief of Staff for Governor Gibbons. And thank you for giving us your time tonight. So this debate is set up. This is the third debate that we've done, and it's set up by the Core State Department of State and Cultural Affairs, which houses the Youth Division. And so for the last, we didn't have one last year. It was COVID and we put everything on hold. But the first two debates were the first of their kind at the state, and we realized that it was our way of serving the youth community by reaching out and encouraging the intellectual arguments and reasoning and public speaking skills and also leadership skills. So our debaters are there are 4 participating schools. There's Palau High School. I'll go down the line. So Palau High School, Vicente High School, Palau Mission Academy, and Palau Madaknay School, who came a long way from Ngatpa, Ibabang. The debate will be held in English so everybody can understand. And the debaters have been preparing for about a month already, in spite of they had exams, they also had awareness week, spring break, but they've been preparing themselves, researching the questions, researching the topics that we pose for them. So I'm going to read out those topics that they're going to be debating tonight. So for the first round, it's going to be between Palau High School and Palau Mission Academy, and their topic is going to be this question: should online safety be part of the Ministry of Education school curriculum? Second round will be between Vicente High School and Palau Madaknay School, and their topic will be this question: is online education better than traditional education? If you notice, we're really tackling this online education questions because, as we've seen from last year, when COVID hit, a lot of universities and colleges went online, even primary schools and high schools. And then whoever wins those 2 rounds will sit and wait for the last round, which is the championship round. And then those who lost those 2 rounds will still have another chance to debate, and they will go to the consolation round. And the question for the consolation round is this: should vaccines be mandatory? And that's just any vaccine. And then the championship topic is this question: in the midst of this pandemic, COVID-19, is it a good idea to open our borders or create a travel bubble? So you understand that these are really pressing issues. Some of them are political issues, but the reason why we do this is we also want to capture what the youth have to say and also capture their perspective on things, which is not always present in large, high-level agenda meetings. So hopefully we can learn a lot from our debaters and their coaches. Coaches will be sitting in front. I asked that the coaches can talk to each other and sit where their teams will be sitting so that they can kind of encourage their team, but they know not to tell them what to argue or have signals. I don't know, they're just there as encouragement. So that's it. And then again, I'm going to welcome everybody, and we see that we are graced by the honor of President of the Republic. President Surang Whips Jr. is here, and First Lady Valerie Whips, and also we have a Justice who's here as a parent as well. Justice Sally is here. All the principals. They are the ones who've been, the principals and teachers are the ones who are on the front line of our education system. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, students. Now I'm going to hand over the mic. It's a really short program, so I'm handing over the mic to Governor Franco Gibbons for a special remarks, and then we'll move on to the debate.
And I'm going to speak in English also so everybody can understand. Wow, she said and mentioned a lot of the things that are on my tablet, original tablet. So thank you, COS. Diklu to welcome President Surang Lips Jr., First Lady, Madre Justice Saling Artiang. Welcome all parents tonight. I see there's many students here at the Constitutional Hall. Can I just see who are the actual participants? Can you raise your hand, please? Okay, so, and we have students from, I guess, Palau High School, Palau Mission Academy, Mizenti, and Palau Modakney School. So this is a yearly program that we put on, and it's open to all the schools in Palau. So you don't have to be in Core State, located here to. You don't need a business license or anything to, participate. Of course, we always want to thank Ministry of Education for their partnership and teachers, principals. Thank you very much for supporting the participants and the students. I believe that our, students, our youth, we have to support them in different programs, whether it be sports or academics, and they have to be challenged. And with this debate, I think they're challenged. Every year's debate challenges with new ideas, new questions, new issues that are in the not only locally but globally. So this is going to be very interesting, and I hope you with Sing Raklil, the travel bubble and stuff, yeah, and the vaccine. I hope you stuck with the CDC and WHO websites, because most of the stuff that you see on other social media is not actually really 100% true. So with that said, I think that's about it. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to take some pointers, because it's been a while since I've been in a debate, and I need all the help I can get. So thank you. So once again, to the participants, the teachers, and the schools, thank you very much. The parents, of course, thank you.
Thank you, Governor Gibbons. And before we begin, we're also praised by the Vice President is here tonight, Vice President Senior. Yes, and I think we see Ambassador Aludong. Is that? Are you? Yeah, that's her. So yes, we are very lucky to have a very prominent supporters tonight, and they came as supporters of the debaters, and that's we're really lucky for that. Now I'm going to explain a little bit about the debate and what the debaters have been working on. So this will be a Lincoln Douglas style debate, and what that is, it encourages reasoning, logic, and then it encourages the student to debate amongst themselves using evidence and facts, and to research and to have prowess in terms of what's that word for orating. So that's the skills we want to promote, and also the entire researching of the topics leading up to tonight. Now we have 3 judges here tonight, so I'm going to quickly introduce them. We'll start by, since this is a program that falls under the Youth Day, Youth March, we decided to have 1 youth judge. Mr. Girudol Sang is a young journalist. He is a product of the Palau education system and also PCC, and he also underwent a months-long training in journalism in Netherlands. So he's a very impressive young man, and we thought we would be lucky to have him here tonight as a judge. Next to him on his right side is Michael Crane. So Michael Crane is a in-house attorney for Core State Government. He works at his attorney for Core State Public Lands Authority, KSPLA, and he just advised me that he is a product of the Jesuit education system. So he went to Marquette University for his undergrad in English and philosophy. So debaters, we have a debater in the house, and he's a lawyer too. But he went to Marquette and also Marquette Law, and he's also been involved in the community before he came here in terms of coaching and judging debates in high schools and undergrad. So thank you, Mike, and thank you for your service. And then, she pointed out to me that she's the old person in the bunch. So I'm going as we go, but that is Director Jennifer Olgarila. And Jennifer Olgarila is our director of the Core State Department of Conservation and Law Enforcement. Young ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, it's hard to be a woman in the field of police and law enforcement. And Jennifer already has a very impressive background. She's been serving in this line of work for the past 27 years. Right now, she is the director. Previous to that, she was the chief of the Rangers. Previous to that, she was the deputy director for the Bureau of Public Safety. So she also has a very impressive education background. She has a master's certificate from the Australia Institute of Police Management, and then she went to undergrad at Cal State Chico, so California State University. So we have 3 judges tonight, and they were each given a judge packet. So they've also prepared for tonight, and they also have a rubric and a system where they'll be scoring you in the fairest way possible. So that is the setup. Now we're ready for the coin toss. So before we begin, let me ask the first round. So it will be Team Pala High School and Team PMA. If you can come up to the front. We are also lucky to have the presence of Director Maol. See here. Okay, there. He's with the students. Okay, so thank you, Director Maol. MO is in the house. Thank you. So let me have the representative from each team. So you guys will be at the way. So Pala High School won the coin toss. We say win because the affirmative team has an advantage, and its team prepared for both sides. So it's a lot of research they've done, and I think they're very confident in either way they go. So I'm going to ask the debaters to introduce themselves. So we'll begin by the team on the left.
Good evening, my name is Angela and I'm a senior at PMA.
Good afternoon, my name is Mary Grace Shirk and I'm also a senior.
Good afternoon, my name is Moded and I am also a senior.
Good evening, my name is Bars Williams and I am a senior at Pala High School.
Will Itasil, good afternoon. My name is Kasil Thomas and I'm a senior at Pala High School.
Hello, my name is Kal Sugiyama. I'm a senior in Palau High School.
Hello, my name is Darren Camacho and I am a senior from Palau High School.
Thank you, debaters, and I think the Vice President will be happy about the setup of gender parity. Over here we have one, it's dominated by females, so good job, guys. So when we start, you will be looking at the timer. Once they're done with their arguments or the time before or after the time, then they sit down and let the other team go. So the order goes like this. I'm going to go through it really quick. It's going to be the first affirmative constructive, that's the affirmative team. After that, and that's 5 minutes. Cross-examination of the affirmative by the negative team for 3 minutes. After that, the negative team will do their constructive. Then for 5 minutes, and then they will be cross-examined by the other team for 3 minutes. After those, they will go to the rebuttal speeches. So first affirmative rebuttal, 3 minutes. Negative rebuttal, 5 minutes. So they get they get 2 extra minutes there, and then the affirmative goes last with 3 minutes, second affirmative rebuttal. So that's the order of tonight's debate.
Hello. Okay. To the esteemed panel of judges, my worthy opponents, and members of the audience, I'd once again like to say good evening. As I said earlier, my name is Bars Williams, and I'm here to stand on the affirmative side of our topic. And I would like to begin by stating the Ministry of Education's vision statement. It states, "Our students will be successful in the Palauan society and the world," which leads to the ministry's mission statement that states, and I quote, "The Republic of Palau Ministry of Education, in partnership with students, parents, and the community, is to ensure student success through effective curriculum and the instruction in a conducive learning environment." So to answer our topic, I say absolutely, online safety should be a part of the Ministry of Education's school curriculum. Online safety should definitely be an essential part of the school curriculum if the ministry wants to see its vision reached. Because we live in an era known as the digital age or information age, characterized by an economy based on information technology, the spread of all kinds of information is easy and rapid through the internet. The internet carries all sorts of information and platforms that thrive every facet of political, economic, and social well-being of the society today, as well as educational. I'd also like to state that in today's day and age, technology is advancing at a very fast rate. For an example, we can look at the iPhone. From September 2017 to October 2020, 14 new models were released in just 3 years. I like to go back to saying that however the internet is very useful and is great for sharing information, it also has its negative impacts on browsers if they're not well educated about the potential online dangers, especially the youth. Online hackers, internet fraud, invasion of privacy, and cyberbullying are real-world issues that the current generation is very vulnerable to. Therefore, the ministry should incorporate online safety into its curriculum if it wants to ensure the success of the students' future in our ever-complex and ever-advancing technological world. The students have the right to learn with the use of technological support, but should first be warned and educated on the dangers and risks of the internet, so they will be safe and confident in using them to their educational advantages. I would like to close by stating a quote by John Dewey. It says, "If we teach today's students as we taught yesterday, we rob them of tomorrow." Thank you, and I yield my time.
Okay, so in order for this curriculum to be effective, MOE must create a progressive curriculum that can keep up with this constantly changing digital world, as you guys previously stated. When you put things into perspective, Palau as a whole has only recently been exposed to faster internet with the installation of fiber optics. We can safely assume that Palau as a whole is already behind in our familiarity to the internet. Therefore, how can you ensure that MOE can provide an effective and up-to-date curriculum? Or as I stated before, this digital world is always changing and there are still many unknowns. So is there even enough information to create a curriculum that is complete? There is also the issue of implementation. Who is going to teach this curriculum? There are already a limited number of teachers because of COVID, and it is difficult to bring in new teachers. In order for the teachers available to be able to teach this class, they themselves also need to be thoroughly educated on the online safety curriculum. With that, I raise another question. Who will teach the teachers? Furthermore, will the teachers we have be available to take on, will the teachers we have be able to take on and teach a whole new class? Wouldn't the implementation of a curriculum like this be too much of a strain on their resources? Just like how parents teach their children not to talk to strangers because it is unsafe, parents should also be able to teach them how to stay safe online. After all, parents are usually the first people who give their children access to the internet. Therefore, why does it have to be MOE's responsibility to make a whole new curriculum in order to teach something that should be taught at home? Thank you, and that concludes my cross-examination.
Suppose Palau does implement an online safety curriculum, applying it to all the schools under the Ministry of Education. This would be in direct opposition to the structures in place that are designated to allow schools to be responsible for the education of their students, both academically and digitally. Therefore, any addition to the curriculum that would require an online safety course would in turn require an extensive overhaul of the current system. Our team is taking the position against the notion that MOE should implement online safety as a permanent part of this curriculum. We argue that it would be unreasonable due to the lack of resources, trained professionals, funding, and as well as the fact that it would be unequally beneficial to all the schools in the ministry's jurisdiction. There are alternatives to properly address the dangers of the internet and educate students about the online safety that will not strain Palau's resources. For example, there can be programs and conventions that can teach online safety, and they don't have to be conducted only by MOE, but also by other organizations as well. Finding the help that we need through outsourcing allows us to avoid these obstacles while still properly educating our children. Therefore, our ability to provide online safety will not be dependent on MOE enforcing a curriculum. Simply put, having a whole new class is an overkill. A computer class would be ideal to incorporate these new standards. Knowledge is good, however. Are we actually using the devices students use to teach them about online safety? Students need to learn how to safely use a device while they actually learn to use the device capabilities when they are young. Because utilizing an existing computer class would be the most effective way of teaching students while maximizing the time and energy resources required to implement these standards and ensure that our kids learn both usage and safety. It is necessary for students to have the knowledge about online safety. However, it should not be mandated by MOE, but by individual schools themselves. The Ministry of Education is in charge of 18 public schools and oversees 6 private schools. If online safety were to be part of MOE's curriculum, many of the schools under MOE would have a great difficulty in implementing it. For example, an elementary school in Sonsorol or Kayang that already has traditional face-to-face school setting would find it very difficult to have online safety as another course subject due to the lack of resources. In sections 1, 2, and 6 of the MOE Technology, Information, and Resources Handbook, schools are already given, and I quote, policies, guidelines, and regulations about using school internet and technology resources in a safe, legal, ethical, and responsible way. End quote. This calls for implementation, but it does not give clear instruction as to how schools must implement these policies. Therefore, online safety should not be part of the curriculum because the handbook outlines that each school should implement e-safety plans at their own discretion. And lastly, while MOE Technology Information and Resources Handbook does give instructions for the usage of schools' technology resources, it does not provide guidelines for students' personal usage of technology or their internet usage outside of school. Rather than implementing online safety courses in the curriculum that would be unequally beneficial for the schools under the ministry, online safety should be a community effort. Parents and family members are responsible for children's online safety and knowledge and should do their part in educating them. UNICEF reports in research for the State of the World Children 2017 that out of the 63,000 collected responses from 24 different countries, about 42% of the surveyed adolescents and youth ages 13 to 24 learned about online safety on their own, and 39% of them learned through families and friends. It's clear that research suggests that most children would prefer if their parents and family members were more involved in helping them to expand and strengthen their ability to safely navigate the internet. Thank you, and that concludes our negative constructive agreement.
Rather than making it an official school curriculum, we could just make it an elective class. So instead of making it mandatory to take that class, we could make it an option for each student to take that class or not. Realistically speaking, not all parents would be willing to learn about online safety to teach their kids about it. Learning from friends and families aren't a strong basis or source of information about online safety. You would never be sure about the information that they would be giving you. We yield our time.
We will now move forward to the first affirmative rebuttal, 3 minutes.
Negative, Miss, you guys asked how can we be sure. That's something we can never really be sure about, but we hope that, not hope, but we believe in that what we teach to our kids in school is they'll benefit from it, and they'll be able to have change, to be able to understand that things like online safety and doing things online has both its good things and bad things, consequences that will reflect them in the future. And like you said, you stated that how are we to educate our teachers to educate us. I believe that MOE will find all means and resources to be able to give training to these teachers to be able to teach us students about the important things of online safety, because it all benefits us as students, and we'll carry all this information into the future and pass it on to others. I'd like to state something from former South African First Lady Graham Mitchell, who is an international youth safety advocate and the widow of Nobel Peace Prize winner President Nelson Mandela. And she said, "Preventing the conflicts of tomorrow means changing the mindsets of the youth today. Without giving Palauan students the tools and mindsets they need to navigate the virtual world of the 21st century, public schools will not be doing their jobs or preparing Palauan youth to live, work, and interact with the world. When problems arise online, Palauan students will not have the same exposure to online safety measures and techniques that students from other nations do have." And teaching students about how to avoid cyberbullying and and how to avoid being victims of cyberbullying is a key part of teaching online safety. And we see those issues today in schools, students cyberbullying each other. And yes. A study put out in the American Journal of Public Health also found that students who are victimized by cyberbullying were less likely to be attached to school and their education and reported lower academic achievements. Schools must have a modern 21st century curriculum that supports students and works to decrease cyberbullying, or our students will be less likely to succeed in life. Thank you. I yield my time.
We will move on to the negative rebuttal for 5 minutes.
Thank you for your cross-examination and rebuttal. Firstly, the first thing that you mentioned was that you wouldn't need a curriculum course for the implementation of online safety education. However, the prompt is asking whether MOE should incorporate online safety education as part of its curriculum. The word curriculum implies that it would be a class enforced in such a curriculum with set standards necessary for advancement and graduation out of school. And so that supports the information of our argument. We would also like to address the question you had about parents and community not wanting to teach their children about online safety, that they wouldn't be active in doing that. But we raise the fact that parents, community, and schools are all collectively responsible for the education of children. It is our duty as a society collectively to help these kids. And it is not through a curriculum course that we would best implement this online safety education. You also mentioned alternatives, which we mentioned in our constructive argument about the fact that a curriculum course, which means a course that is required in order to advance and graduate, is not necessary for the implementation of online safety education. We mentioned that there are alternatives to this that are available here in Palau that would not strain MOE's resources, that would still achieve MOE's vision, which you mentioned in their motto, of educating our students and setting them up for success. There are already non-government organizations and other organizations that are active in teaching the youth of Palau that would be able to teach our children through conventions and other means, as well as the implementation of this education within already set computer courses here at our schools without having to have extra additional resources and funding for the set classes. Basically, online safety education is important for our students. We have never argued against that point. But the implementation of online safety within our schools through a structured class within a curriculum is completely unnecessary. The goals of MOE, as stated in their handbooks and in their vision and mottos, can still be accomplished through alternative methods, both through our community and parents themselves. And so, to reiterate, our team negates the resolution resolved that MOE should implement an online safety course into its curriculum. A structured class would be excessive in meeting students' needs for online safety, and not all schools in Palau will be as ready to meet the standards of the proposed curriculum course. Schools should individually decide what works best for their students and plan to educate them about online safety based on their needs. The youth of Palau should be kept safe not just by their schools, but through parental and community support. We argue that curriculum standard online safety course would not be the most effective method to combat the dangers of the internet due to a lack of resources, trained professionals, and funding. Therefore, we propose that in addition to a pre-existing computer course, conventions, or strengthening our schools and their ability to utilize current staff in tandem with parents and home would be ideal in meeting the needs of our students. For these reasons, it is clear that the Ministry of Education should not implement online safety as a permanent part of their curriculum. There is no guarantee that this curriculum will ensure the safety of Palau's youth. As a community, we have to maximize our efforts to educate our children in accordance with our current capabilities, rather than relying on a whole new curriculum full of requirements. This will ensure that Palau schools can be proactive within the sole purpose of providing for Palau's youth and teaching them how to thrive in an increasingly digital world. Thank you. We yield our time.
We will now move on to the second affirmative rebuttal, 3 minutes, and that will be the final.
Thank you very much for your statement. Now, You might claim that creation of a new curriculum is a slow and a painstaking process, but it has to be done if we want our kids to be well informed and be computer savvy to make it in the real world. You may also claim that it should be the responsibility of the parents to teach their kids the online safety information, and yes, I agree. However, since school is an institution of learning and technology use pertaining to internet services is now one of the major resources used in the classroom of learning, it is critical that online safety be vigorously taught in order to have an effective learning. This idea is the same as the idea of creating a conducive classroom environment for students to learn in. Rather, it'll be teaching to ensure a conducive digital world and prevent potential dangers that may hinder or get in the way of the students' learning. Lastly, you may claim that internet access may be problematic in outlying schools, but a teacher can and will find ways to download information and teach it to her or his students without the use of internet. The outlying schools may not have the greatest Wi-Fi out there, but it doesn't mean your safety is promised. It's better to know before you act out or get hit in the long run. And it would also make sense if we share this information with everyone else. By doing this, teachers and parents and the students are promised the information that they need in order to be safe around the dangers of the internet that's surrounding the world itself. We are growing together as a society. We cannot we can never say, oh, we'll do it next time, because it will happen. Might as well do it now. Why are we waiting for it to happen in order for us to act on something else that could be fixed right in front of us? In conclusion, online safety should and must be a part of the Ministry of Education school curriculum if the ministry and the whole Republic of Palau wants to see and have a successful and productive members of our society and the world. We are not going to be stuck here forever. Might as well know what we need to know before we get out there where it's more advanced. We live in a world where technology advancement in our lives is inevitable, and therefore, students should be taught online safety at school. Thank you.
Thank you, debaters. Now we will give the judges 10 minutes to tally up their scores, and we'll announce the winner of this round. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we have the scores back from the judges. And so we have sort of a complicated scoring system that we adopted from some forensic society. But in total points, Palau High School, the affirmative team, gets 26 points. And then Palau Mission Academy gets 29 points. So PMA is the winner of this round. Congratulations. Now you guys can rest and prepare for the next rounds. 5 minutes as they switch, and I will call on the next team to come up. Next team, so BMS and MHS. Palau High School will be the negative team, and Vicente High School will be the affirmative team. So this round, I'm going to remind the participants and judges of the topic. The question is online education better than traditional education? And before we begin, I will let them self-introduce.
My name is Takami Agitaya, and I'm a junior at Vicente High School.
Good evening, my name is Julia Chokopoloy, and I'm a junior at Vicente High School.
Good evening, my name is Aliyah Ngirutang, and I'm a junior at Vicente High School.
Ngilrap Singay, nga Clara Isaro Williander, nga junior at Vicente High School.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Oriat Clolad, and I'm from BMS. I'm a junior, sorry.
Good evening. My name is Janaya Sarmilal and I'm a freshman at PMS.
Good afternoon. My name is Harvey, and I'm a sophomore from Balao School.
Good evening. My name is Emmanuel Chavan sa Armidal Peredo. I'm a junior at BMS High School.
Thank you. And now we'll begin with affirmative, constructive. 5 minutes.
Ali, okay. As the affirmative, we believe that online learning is better than traditional education. Online learning, also known as e-learning, is a form of education which is delivered and administered using the internet. According to research from Dexway, a global institution for education, the main aim of online education is to help students earn higher education no matter where they are, as long as they have configured computers and cell phones. It can be a very rich learning experience that is self-paced. There are 4 ways that e-learning is administered. Number 1, knowledge databases. 2, online support. 3, asynchronous training. And 4, synchronous training. Online courses provide many benefits for elementary school students all the way up to college and university attendees. There are many gains of virtual learning if it were to be done properly. According to the Nitro College Organization, online education can be more interactive as well as motivating compared to traditional education. E-learning can include elements like images, videos, audio, animation, chat rooms, and gaming scenarios that create more interest in learning compared to a traditional classroom where students have to sit for hours listening to lectures. It's self-paced. Most e-learning programs can be taken when needed. The software books that are set up for using TrainerSoft create a model-based design allowing the learner to go through smaller chunks of training that can be used and absorbed a while before moving on. E-learning provides a consistent message that can be delivered to a significant number of people. E-learning eliminates the problems associated with different instructors teaching slightly different material on the same subject. It gives an opportunity for students to learn together from one instructor. Schools are sometimes incapable of teaching a vast amount of students because of small sizes of classrooms or because crowded classes are not sufficient for learning. With e-learning, the size of classroom buildings is not a problem. Virtual learning offers convenience. With online school, kids can get their schedules to work with their family's lifestyle. Traditional school hours may not work for families who travel often or for kids who are involved in the arts or are elite athletes. Homebound kids with medical issues can attend online school. Students can thrive with fewer social distractions. Cases such as physical bullying can cause chronic absenteeism, which leads to failing grades. College students can fit their online courses around their existing responsibilities and commitments. Even better, they don't have to travel anywhere to study. They can simply log into the virtual campus from the comfort of their own home or office. Here are 2 scenarios where online courses come in handy for college students. A working mom who cannot be physically present at college because she needs to work and breastfeed her baby. And a Palawan High School graduate who cannot be physically present at his or her dream college because there are no flights with the current COVID-19 pandemic. According to a corporate finance institute, another very important aspect of online courses during college is that they are much cheaper. Cost is often a prohibitive factor that prevents students from enrolling in courses they're interested in or enrolling in colleges in general. Already having the burden of tuition, students still have to consider money spent on traveling to college and traveling back home for the holidays. They still have to consider dorms and living allowances and cafeteria payment. With online courses, those factors would be eliminated and students can focus mainly on college tuition. Online education is beneficial and flexible to many circumstances, and traditional education is not. When problems such as COVID-19 occur, traditional education ends up being substituted by online education. In tough circumstances such as a pandemic, traditional education falters while online education stands. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, e-learning is the better option. Thank you.
We'll move on to the negative cross-examination of affirmative. 3 minutes.
But what if you don't have internet access? How are you going to be doing online education? And you said that there is bullying at traditional school, but what about cyberbullying? And how many hours do you expect a student to spend on online school, and how many days per week? And what are some examples of tropical assignments and deadlines? And in what terms of time and work are overall expectations the same or different as traditional school? And how do I track a child's progress or my progress on online school? Does the circumstance focus mainly on academics, or are there social and emotional activities to help develop skills like on working in groups? And how do students interact with each other? Are there any impersonal activities like field trips? How does the school manage behavior issues? How are parents going to be kept in the loop? Is the school accredited in the States? If so, where do our students take state assessments? What is the main way they will interact? Email, video chats, phone calls, or Zoom? How do teachers provide feedbacks, and how often do they do this? How do teachers assign kids for help? How often do they do things like hold extra sessions or workshops? How does your school have special academic teachers? And how are they going to help students with special needs? Are your teachers certified to be teaching in online classes? And have your teachers received any training on to help students in need on online? And that is it. We yield our time.
All right, we will move on to the first negative constructive, 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, and my name is Harvey. Once again, I'm from Bela Malakmay. And you know what? Traditional education is much better. We get to go to school, do hands-on work and activities. We humans have evolved to socialize and compete to get optimum learning. And actually, students learn more by doing hands-on work, activity, and so after years of learning, students get to have experience with knowledge and performance. So it makes it easier for them to find an occupation or work job. And advantages of traditional classroom learning: active learning, maintaining interpersonal relationships. Not all majors can be taught online. Access to libraries and research materials. Learning is scheduled, extracurricular activities. Lack of face-to-face interactions, and not all majors are available. And I yield to my teammate.
So, too much time in front of the computer or tablet or phone screen may be harmful to your health, and it can also lack the control. Like there won't be any teacher to be over there, so you won't be doing things on track of time. And if you're in traditional schools, there's more communication, and as a teacher you can be looking at the students' body language, and there are specific things you can be doing on traditional schools that you cannot be doing on online, such as swimming and other physical education activities, and it's usually a solo act. If a student has a question, and when they message or email to their teachers, it will take 1-2 days or maybe weeks before, and by then when the teacher responds to the student's question, and then the assignment is already near the deadline. And online school will also require self-discipline. Unlike online school, traditional learning and training have the benefits of easy tracking both process and falling behind. This works for many learners as well, as some people prefer their programs to be closely monitored in order to perform well. And as humans, we emotionally we need the social interaction with other people because we are like that. And in an isolation room, let's say your room, and being on online class, there are some people who go insane just because it's just them and that device. They don't have a social interaction with, let's say, their peers or their classmates. And in traditional school, you are able to talk with your peers and mingle. And if you have problems, you can also talk with your teacher or your peers. But in online classes, are you gonna be in Zoom and talking about your problems to your teacher? and that is it, and I yield my time.
Okay, we will move on to the cross-examination of the negative by the affirmative team. 3 minutes.
I would like to ask, do you guys have statistics that show that there is a higher percentage of bullying from the internet rather than bullying in a traditional classroom? And also, if they choose online education, wouldn't the school have to provide resources for them to be able to go online?
We would like to address one point about socialization. The fact that we are at home, if we're having online education, there is still socialization happening at your house. So that doesn't eliminate that. Another thing we want to add is that there are social interactions that can be done at home, not at school.
You said that if kids are not on traditional education, they don't have access to libraries and research materials. They don't have access to resources. But that is far from true. The internet has so much more resources. Kids here right now, when you guys need information, do you go to the library or do you take your phone and ask Google? And you said that when students have questions, they take 1 to 2 days through email to be answered. That is not true and totally dependent on the teacher. And you said that online school requires self-discipline. Isn't that such a benefit for online school because it teaches students to be self-disciplined? Thank you.
Our last question is, would traditional education be a better option during this pandemic? And we yield our time.
Okay, now we move on to the rebuttal. So it will be the first affirmative rebuttal, 3 minutes. Affirmative team.
To your point addressed to health, if students are at home, they can still exercise on their own. If you want to talk about isolation, if you're at home, you are with your parents. If you have siblings, you can interact with your siblings and not go insane. If you're in an isolation room, sure you can go insane because you're isolated from all contact. At home, you have your mom, you have your dad, or your sisters. As to assignments and deadlines, isn't it the same with traditional education? If I go to school and I have an essay due tomorrow, I still have to turn in my essay tomorrow. Same thing with online education. Even though it's due tomorrow, you have to turn it in. Same thing with traditional education, so that thing would negative. Yes, humans are social creatures. We need to interact with each other. With online education, you can still interact with one another. I can go on Messenger, Snapchat, Instagram. I can chat with my friends if they're at home and I'm at my own house. Again, we want to stress that there's a lot of information out on the web. There are people who are not into reading books in the library, being cooped up. They would rather be on their phone, be on a tablet, or anything to read. Sure, too much computer time is harmful, and you stated that because if you're on your computer for too long, that will harm your health. But again, if you're at home, you can do your own exercise, and you can do it with your parents. For hands-on learning, if you're at home, you can learn from your parents once again. And yes, that's all I have.
As we state, online education is beneficial and flexible to many circumstances. School institutions will manage the problems students may face. Online education will in fact benefit the students, not harm their health in any way. After all, it is all for educational purposes. Thank you.
When I was talking about how online education works and how it's administered, I talked about knowledge databases. When you said that we lack resources, knowledge database is actually a way for software to provide information and offer in-depth explanations and guidance for software questions. And teachers are still accessible through online education. We have Zoom, we have email, and Google Classroom to ask our teacher questions. And of course, if we're doing Zoom classes, they could answer our questions right away. You don't have to email your questions.
All right, we will move on to the negative rebuttal, 5 minutes.
So you ask, would traditional education still be better during this pandemic? Well, in a rural area, in one of the high schools in Thailand, they have a practice of having a clear shield in front of them to prevent the disease from contracting to others, and their tables are separated in 6 feet, and they are also using the practice of wearing the mask. And you say that there's no isolation at home because of siblings and parents, but would that be the same as talking to your friends at school? And you are saying that you can still learn from your parents, but parents also they have a limit to what they learned, and we high school students I say that we're learning more than what our parents did, because our parents learned things from the past, and we're learning things today that are new information and new data. And you also said that you're communicating to social media apps like Snapchat, but is it the same as looking and talking to your friends or peers in real life? Because in real life and in the phone, it's different, because you cannot hug your friends or cry on your friend's shoulder on your phone. And I yield to my team.
One small argument that we have on our side towards online education is that some discipline cannot be taught at home. Lack of interpersonal relationships between classmates is still something you cannot deny. Public discipline and being able to talk publicly is still skills you also cannot achieve in online education. And I yield my time to my team.
So, the answer to the question that you guys raised, saying, do you have statistics? To show cyberbullying at, something like that. But anyways, so I can talk about the differences between cyberbullying, bullying online and untraditional classes. In traditional classes, bullying is preventable. Teachers, principals, security, staffs can prevent a lot of bullying through traditional classes. But online classes, it is hard to prevent the cyberbullying, because a lot of students and kids come from different places, and they have different kinds of attitudes and mentality. Like, let's say a student is ignorant, or I don't know, something like that. That's it.
We will move on now to the second affirmative rebuttal, 3 minutes.
I want to point out that online education does not involve and relate to social media such as Snapchat, as you mentioned. Online education is strictly for educational purposes. It provides a gateway for students to continue their education wherever they are, despite the circumstances. Yes, socialization with classmates is important, but that can be done outside of school.
You asked the question, does traditional education, is it good in this pandemic? And then you used Thailand as an example, where they practiced certain ways to prevent COVID from spreading. But not all nations and not all places have the ability to afford that situation. Not all places are like Thailand, where they can think of such things and can afford to pay for the equipment used for that situation. It costs so much. And you said that with online education, we don't have the ability to socialize with our friend. That's not true. Remember that education is about learning, not about socializing. With online education, you're not forced to sit in your room for your whole life. You can get out and hang out with your friend outside. In fact, I become closer with my friends not because I study with them, but rather because I spend time with them outside of school. And then you said discipline cannot always be taught at home. But discipline cannot always be taught at school either. It is not always taught at traditional education. In fact, students with bad behavior can influence their peers. For example, myself, I never knew bad words until I attended school. And you also said that different students are ignorant. Exactly why traditional education is not a good option, because I'll learn to be ignorant like my peer. Thank you.
Again, we want to stress one point, that the reason students start to learn practical skills at school is because they don't have the time to be at home. Traditional learning systems require students to be at one place at one time to learn from their teachers. So if you're at home for online education, you can learn from your parents and the people at your house. Thank you.
In answer to your question whether we did have statistics, yes, we do. In a study published by the Education Department of Taiwan, 44.1% of students experienced more bullying at school than did in cyberbullying. Only 41% experienced that.
All right, that concludes this round of debate. So the judges' scores are back, and with a total of 28 points, BMS Pelao Malakngay School got a total of 28 points. Vicente High School came with a total of 29 points, so 1 point difference. The winner of this round is Vicente High School. You guys can now prepare for the championship and the consolation round. The debaters for the consolation round, to come up front, we have a Pelao Malakngay School and Pelao High School. The question they'll be addressing on this round is this question: should vaccines be mandatory? So Pelao Malakngay School will take the affirmative position. Pelao High School will take the negative position. First, we're going to have the first affirmative constructive, 5 minutes.
What is a vaccine? A vaccine is a preparation or killed organism living on its attenuated organisms of living fully vivalent, or organisms that is administered to produce artificially increase immunity to a particular disease. Mandatory means containing, consisting, or relating to mandate, and mandate is commit to memory.
So should vaccines be mandatory? Well, there's a risk in everything. A pandemic in Palau is not something to take lightly. One person with any virus is enough to infect everyone. Well, doctors wouldn't be reckless enough to hand out dangerous vaccines. In fact, vaccines tested by the Center for Disease Control show that the vaccine for COVID-19 proved to be 85% effective with only mild side effects. There is a risk in the cure for COVID-19, but a pandemic in a country is something much more dangerous than side effects. I yield to my teammate.
So Vaccine is the most effective way to protect against infectious diseases. Vaccine also strengthens your immune system by training it to recognize and fight against specific viruses. And when you get vaccinated, you are protecting yourself and help protecting members of your family and the community. And an example I'm going to be using is the COVID-19 vaccine. So, before they were giving out vaccines, most jobs and companies were closed because of the fear of getting corona and not being social distanced, which caused a damage in most countries' economy. And for Palau, our borders were closed, so we weren't getting any new tourists. And in Palau, our main income is the tourists. So when the borders were closed, we began to lose tourists, which caused a major injury in our economy. And private hotels and resorts were also closed because without any tourists coming, they wouldn't be making any money because no one will be staying at the resorts or their hotels. I yield.
Vaccines can save children's lives. The American Academy of Pediatrics states that most children vaccines are 90% to 99% effective in preventing disease. According to Shot at Life, a United Nations Foundation partner organization, vaccines save 2.5 million children from preventable diseases every year, which equates to roughly 285 children saved every hour. The Centers for Disease Control, CDC, estimates that childhood immunization prevents about 419 million illnesses, 26.8 million hospitalizations, and 936,000 early deaths of children born between 1994 and 2018. The measles vaccine has increased childhood deaths from measles by 74%. Okay. Vaccines also protect future generations. Vaccinated mothers protect their unborn children from viruses that could potentially cause birth defects, and vaccinated communities can help eradicate diseases for future generations. Before the rubella vaccine was licensed in 1969, a global rubella German measles outbreak caused the deaths of 11,000 babies and birth defects in 20,000 babies between 1963 and 1965 in the United States. Women who were vaccinated as children against rubella have...
All right, we will move on to the next argument, the cross-examination of the affirmative by the negative team, 3 minutes.
Vaccines aren't a sure way to prevent people from getting infected by a disease. Like you stated, there's an 85% chance that the vaccine will prevent us from getting infected. There's still a 15% chance that someone will get infected. Another one of your teammates stated that there's a 99% chance for vaccines to prevent the disease. How can we trust information that contradicts from each other? Also, if there's a disagreement from some of the citizens, how will we deal with them?
You said there's a risk to everything, and then isn't there also a risk to taking the vaccine? Like many risks?
We yield our time.
All right, we will then move on to the first negative constructive, 5 minutes.
So we, the negative side, disagree with the topic and say that the vaccine should not be mandatory. Everybody's given a human right where you have a choice on what you want to do with your body, and that includes things that you would want to put into your body, such as vaccines. Everybody has this choice, and there will be those who are not ready to take the vaccine because of personal fears or experiences they may have had, or because they are allergic. According to the CDC, it is advised that certain people do not get specific vaccines or that they wait to get certain vaccines due to their personal health reasons. I'd also like to bring up a case that happened in 1955 proving that not all vaccines are effective. This is also from the CDC. So in 1955, there was an incident called the Cutter incident, where some batches of the polio vaccine were distributed to the public. But unfortunately, although they were thought to contain the dead virus, they actually contained the live virus. And this caused at least 250 cases that could have been avoided if they didn't give out the vaccine. There are also many side effects that can occur to people who get the vaccine, ranging from headaches to nausea to drowsiness, and the list goes on. And because of these reasons, people might want to wait, and we should respect that choice. They shouldn't have to take the vaccine just because the government tells them to. They should have a free choice to do what they want when they want to. Another reason why vaccines shouldn't be mandatory is because they are all recommended. Not all, sorry. Most of them are recommended. And they are not 100% proven to be successful. There will always be that small percentage of vaccines that backfire. A large percentage of vaccines are also still going through trials and being tested. They are not 100% proven, as I said earlier. I'd also like to bring up another event that happened recently in Saipan, where someone was vaccinated for the COVID-19, for coronavirus, but they ended up testing positive. So that just shows that even though people get vaccinated and they think they're safe, there is still a small percentage that they will end up being a carrier or a transmitter of these viruses. If we make the vaccine mandatory, there is also a chance that there will be social disagreements which can lead to greater issues that could have just been avoided if we didn't tell the people to do something that they didn't want to do. Thank you. We yield our time.
Okay, we will move on to the cross-examination of the negative team by the affirmative team. 3 minutes.
Do you have relevant evidence to your statement, or is this a personal opinion? What source did you get? Did you get the information? What would happen if a pandemic hits Palau? The fact we refuse to use the vaccine would be our downfall. I yield to my teammate.
So, the argument about people's rights, whether their right to choose whether or not they get a vaccine or not. One thing that can be done is make it mandated for public spaces. For example, if they choose to go to the library, they'd have to be vaccinated. If we can do it that way, then we wouldn't have to risk everyone's rights, whether or not they get the vaccine or not. I yield to my teammate.
And yes, when we get vaccinated, there's still a slight chance that we can be infected, but the chance of not being infected is greater than being infected by whatever the disease is. And yes, there is a risk of being harmed when getting the vaccine, but would you rather get the disease and die or get infected, or would you rather know that you try not to get infected by getting or die by getting the vaccine? I yield our time.
Okay, we will move on to the rebuttal speeches. So first, affirmative rebuttal, 3 minutes.
As stated, although when we get vaccinated, there is a chance of still getting infected, the chance of not getting infected is greater than being infected. Yes, there is a risk of getting harmed when taking vaccine, but would you want to get the disease and die? Or knowing that you tried to not by getting the vaccine? Yeah. And also, if you really don't want to get the vaccine and let's say like COVID hits our country, how would you be able to make money for your family, to feed your children, or so you need something to help you to get what you want, even though there's a slight chance. You guys said 15% of people can die or be infected by the disease while they already get the vaccine. You guys want to yield? You want to come? Okay, I yield to my partner.
So the vaccine is also the most effective way to protect yourself against the disease. And as stated, the vaccine is also a great way to strengthen your immune system by training it to recognize and fight against the specific virus. And oh my God, so, oh my goodness. Yeah, we yield our time.
All right, thank you. We will move on to the negative rebuttal. 5 minutes.
To answer your question about if it's our personal opinion or we got it from a reliable source, we got all our information from the Center of Disease Control, which we have printed out if you want to see. Sorry. And yes, I'd like to also state that there are more mandating vaccines isn't the only real way, only definite way into preventing us from getting diseases. We can do daily practices like hand washing, wearing masks, social distancing, like how we've been doing before. Even if we didn't have the virus, we didn't even have a vaccine before, but we took precautions. We took precautions to prevent us from getting the disease. Another thing I'd like to state is that convincing people to take the vaccine can be hard because we are going to be taking their freedom of choice into putting what they don't want in their bodies. And I just like to state that we've survived chickenpox, influenza, and other diseases that don't need vaccines, and we all survived from it. I yield my time to my teammate.
As stated before, you guys mentioned there's a risk to everything. Since going by your statement, this movement does have a risk. And to sum this up, you really can't speak for everyone if you're going to say that the ones who are not taking the vaccinations are going to be careless about the safety of others. They don't want the vaccinations because they feel like their safety is in the hands of someone else they're not familiar with. Everyone wants to trust whatever we have around us. We want to feel protected by the government. It's a promise made to us. We are Palau. We want to be all together. We're small, and we want to achieve our goals in a great way, where it's acceptable. We can't speak for everyone that the people who are not going to get the vaccinations are going to be careless. If they are worried about the vaccines, I'm pretty sure they're worried about the disease itself. You can see what the disease does to everyone else. What the problem is that some of them can't see what the vaccine does. Even if they have, it will add on to their superstitions. And at the same time, you mentioned that if they wanted to go to public areas, they'd have to be vaccinated. You're already robbing someone of their right to go around in their own country. I have to be vaccinated by something that I'm not sure of, just so I can go to the park with my families. I'm pretty sure that if, with all these guidelines, if we follow them, we would be safe altogether. It's what we all want. And making the vaccines mandatory wouldn't really make sense. And we believe that everyone should have their own opinion and right to choose what they want for their own body, for it is their lifestyle, their way of living. And that I conclude with this statement. Thank you. I yield our time.
All right, we will move on to the final statement, the second affirmative rebuttal, 3 minutes.
I'd like to point out that influenza actually did take vaccines to slow it down. In fact, way back in the time CDC didn't even exist. I learned this from my Palawan history book. Yet again, if a pandemic hit Palau, would you trust someone sitting in a library knowing that people aren't mandated to take vaccines? I yield to my teammate.
And as you said, we also mentioned that there's also there's a possibility of getting harmed by getting the vaccine. But we have to remember, before we're not getting the vaccine right away, we have that first vaccine that prepares us for the actual vaccine. So by getting the first vaccine before the second, we are preparing our body for the actual vaccine we're taking to prevent the virus, the coronavirus. And that's also helping your immune system to develop before you're getting the actual vaccine, so you're not gonna get any big harm to your body. I yield to my team.
Vaccines, you say it's like, how do you call this? It's like preparation or homework for your body. So when you take the vaccine, it doesn't just help you, but it prepares your body, and I yield to my team.
Okay, you guys were talking about chickenpox and smallpox. So chickenpox and smallpox is a different disease that will just hurt your outer body, but it won't kill you. So you don't need. So they decided not to give out vaccines because there's no big deal about it. But COVID-19, they say that it can kill a human being, people, elders who are sick or they have sickness. So that's why we have the vaccine, and we yield our time.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this round of consolation, and we shall wait for the judges. 10 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, debaters, I will now announce the winner of the consolation round, and again, they will get the fourth place go home with $50, and the third place will get to go home with $100 tonight. So, coming in at 26 points, we have Bela Modatngay School, and PHS got 27 points. So PHS won this consolation round. I also want to point out that when we met the coaches and did the prep work for this, Bela Modatngay School is they teach their students in Palawan only, so they were the school that made a compromise. So I just want to point that out. So the topic for the championship round is this question: in the midst of this pandemic, COVID-19, is it a good idea to open our borders or create a travel bubble? We made an error, our fault, Core State. We put an or there, so one team prepared 2 different sides, and one team prepared just for open borders. So it's a misinterpretation of the question, or we didn't write it right, but luckily both teams made a compromise. So for this debate round, the question, we will drop the travel bubble part of the question, and of course, they might bring that up. It's part of their, that's fine, the judges know that. But the statement will be, is it a good idea to open our borders? So that's what they're going to be debating on during this pandemic. And they've already decided that both teams talk, and since PMA prepared for just open borders / trouble bubble, while Ms. Senti prepared for open borders versus trouble bubble, they have made a compromise, so there's no coin toss. Ms. Senti will take the affirmative position and PMA will take the negative position. So thank you for the compromise and good teamwork. Let us begin by the first affirmative constructive, 5 minutes.
Before I start to present evidences and claims on why opening Palau's borders would be more beneficial, I want to just explain and clarify just a couple of things. Obviously, opening Palau's borders would mean we're allowing all other countries to send people / tourists to come and visit Palau. With this being said, of course there's a live global pandemic, there are safety measures that can be implemented to decrease the chances of countries catching the coronavirus. Examples, based on a January 3rd directive by former Minister Amais Roberts. Quarantine and isolation here in Palau of all incoming people must last for about a month. Of course, there will be workers who drop off necessities like food, water, etc., but there's a process for this. No contact will be made between outside workers and quarantined people. They will only drop the stuff in front of the rooms and the people will get it. Then remember, since there is a testing, if results come to Palau as a positive case, then the person will not be allowed to fly into Palau. Also, there are alternatives to opening our borders. We can create travel bubbles, which choose the safest countries to allow tourists in our borders. One great example of this would be Taiwan. Taiwan has a set of travel bubbles with countries like New Zealand and Singapore. Their economy there and the overall health of the population is very good. They limit the amount of people that they know for sure they can handle if they can catch any cases of COVID. According to the Worldometer, because of this, Taiwan has only had a total of 1,007 coronavirus cases, where 10 of them have passed away and 926 of them have recovered. With this in mind, why can't Palau do this? On the opposite end, if you want to open borders, for our first point, let me just stress the importance of tourism to Palau. Based on the U.S. Department of Interior's initial economic report on COVID of Micronesia, 20% of all workers from Palau were from the tourism industry. In 2019, Palau was able to attract 90,000 foreign visitors, with the tourism industry contributing 20% to Palau's gross domestic product. Prior to the pandemic, 2020's fiscal year projected that tourism numbers were expected to actually grow by 30% and 116 visitors for the year. Instead of growing, now the numbers are expected to drop by 51% for this year, for 2020's year, sorry. For 2021, it's expected to drop even more by 89%. With all these declines in numbers, Palau is expected to lose 22.3% of their total GDP and lose 3,128 jobs in the private sectors alone. What does a loss of jobs mean? An answer to this: poverty, which leads me to my next point. Moving on, jobs of course will close down and salaries will get lower and poverty can increase. Losing what was 20% of Palau's GDP will make a huge impact on funds to the economy. It's already very evident in our communities. Many hotels have been forced to lay off their workers because there are no tourists to tend to these hotels. No tourists, again, equals no money. No money means no salaries to the employees. What else can hotel managers do with employees if they cannot pay them? Two examples of this would be Palau Hotel and Sea Passion Hotel. On an article posted by BBC News by Owen Amos, Mr. Brian Lee, the owner of Palau Hotel, states that Palau is such a small country that its citizens won't stay in Palau. He further states that because no tourists come to his hotel, he's trying to find jobs to offer to his 20 staff members. The problem is empty hotels cannot be maintained and renovated forever. He says, I can stay for another year, but then after, I may have to close down. So what happens to these laid off workers? There's a possibility they will fall into poverty.
What are some results of poverty? According to the cause of crime by a University of Hawaii student, Mr. Anthony Escanaro, poverty does cause crime because force is an easy way to get a large quantity of goods. Poverty causes desire and increases the crime rate. Poverty is the mother of all crimes. It's part of us human beings to lust and yearn for things. What happens when these things are unavailable because of poverty that has been presented to Palauans? Just like many other struggling people, the crime rate in Palau will increase. An example of this would be illegal immigrants from Mexico Mexico who flee to the USA because they want to escape living in poverty in Mexico. Or take into account a regular drug dealer who was forced to go into a game of trapping, in other words, selling drugs in order to make money. Poverty is the reason to why the crime rate of our country would go up because of poverty. Again, is the mother of all crimes. Palau is also susceptible to these erroneous acts. Here in Palau, there are evidently drug dealers who roam the streets and sell drugs. There was even a case where 2 masked Palau men entered the Bangladesh store and they killed the store clerk in order to steal from that store. Sure, the robbers can have some blame because it was their choice, but will someone whose family has always had money would be into selling drugs or stealing from stores? No. A wealthy family would have their family set financially, so they will need a different way to earn money or be...
Thank you. We will move on to the cross-examination of the affirmative team by the negative team. 3 minutes.
Okay, first and foremost, I think the biggest issue and fear we have when it comes to opening our borders is, of course, our public health. So we are in the middle of a pandemic, and the only reason Palau has been lucky enough to remain COVID-free is because we are almost entirely closed off. So do the benefits of opening our borders really outweigh the lives that could be lost if COVID does infect Palau because we reopen our borders? Regarding our economic situation, we are still receiving financial aid from our allies, especially Taiwan and the US. So why can't we maybe wait a little longer before we open our borders? If Palau opens its borders, how can you justify all the lives that could be lost if COVID reaches Palau, all for the sake of money? That concludes my cross-examination. Concluding meaning we yield our time.
Thank you. We will move on to the first negative constructive, 5 minutes.
Is the revitalization of Palau's economy more important than Palauan lives? Suppose Palau does adopt an open border policy. This would be an inherently dangerous course of action due to the incredible health risks to the nation. Our team is taking the position against the notion that the government should implement open border policies, and we argue that it would be unreasonable due to a lack of readiness to control an outbreak of COVID-19 and the fragility and uncertainty of sustained travel bubble and the increased risk of worsening our economic situation. Although measures have been taken to prepare Palau in case of an outbreak, we are still unequipped to handle an actual COVID outbreak. As of March 17, 2021, the Ministry of Health announced that Palau now has 30 ventilators, and out of those, 5 are still in calibration. This brings our number of actual working ventilators to 25. Palau has unemployment benefits from the US. This is partially why we haven't been so desperate to open up so quickly. Beyond public health rationales, explanations for why governments adopt travel restrictions are largely limited to economic interests and political pressure to do something. However, we need more information about the decision-making behind the unprecedented cross-border measures adopted during this pandemic. Complex considerations could be at play: evolving knowledge about COVID-19 and the new strains of the virus, insufficient clarity of WHO and IHR recommendations, timing of the public health emergency of international concern declaration, unknown efficacy of specific measures, lack of trust in public health officials, geopolitical dynamics, and epidemiological trends over time. Economically speaking, opening borders would worsen our situation if COVID cases are confirmed. Guam, which hasn't had any travel restrictions since the beginning of the pandemic, is an example of what could happen if we do open our borders. Even though Guam's borders were open, allowing continued trade and tourism, the outbreak of COVID-19 on the island caused a devastating reduction in arrivals, effectively shutting down their main industry. On July 24, 2020, the Guam Visitors Bureau predicted that 250,000 to 300,000 arrivals in the fiscal year of 2021. That's a big and devastating difference compared to the 1.6 million arrivals in 2019. The Bureau also conducted a survey and concluded that Guam has lost 83% of its revenue. On June 26, Governor Leon Guerrero extended the public health emergency through July and canceled the reopening of tourism planned for July 1. Guam had the greatest one-week increase of confirmed COVID cases in the United States at 438%. The governor appealed for continued vigilance from the public, and we are extremely lucky that Palau's government was wise enough to prevent the same thing from happening to us by closing our borders before COVID could infect Palau. And even if Palau tries to open safely through a travel bubble, despite the necessary safety protocols and enforced regulations, travel bubbles are still fragile. Because the probability of Palau contracting the virus through the bubble is inevitable, the issue lies in Palau's ability and capacity when trying to deal with the outbreak. There is no guarantee that the bubble will remain stable. And yes, Palau has been working to vaccinate its people, but the vaccine was developed for the initial strain of COVID-19, and it's not proven that the current vaccines being distributed will protect against the new strains of the virus. Taiwan has already come into contact from the UK variant of COVID-19, and there is no guarantee that they'd be safe from the future strains from incoming travelers. Because of the travel bubble, these potential carriers would have more access to Palau, possibly leading to an outbreak that cannot be controlled by the vaccines we administered. And even with the vaccinations being distributed, it is virtually impossible to reach herd immunity in Palau. Based on the demographics of our population, 20% are under 18. The required percentage of the population that must be vaccinated is 80%. When you factor in the people who are eligible but refuse to take the vaccine, it is evident that Palau is unable to actually receive the 80% we need for herd immunity. Therefore, if we open our borders, there is a higher risk in COVID-19 circulating long-term and continuing the risk of outbreaks. And this concludes our constructive argument.
Thank you. We will now move to the cross-examination of the negative by the affirmative team. 3 minutes.
Are you aware of the calculations made by Palau's health officials, which talks about the chances of COVID-19 reaching Palau?
Okay, so you're saying that there is insufficient clarity of the WHO, that there is the lack of trust of the Ministry of Health, and we are pushed to do something by politicians. But in this case, who are we supposed to trust in? Yes, maybe what they say is not 100% accurate, but at least they have some evidence to back up their claims, rather than just making accusations and saying that closed borders is beneficial to our economy. They have facts and statistics and logistics to help and support their point. Sorry.
Are you aware that the travel bubble is actually easier to contain and maintain a COVID-19 outbreak?
Also, I would also like to ask, are you aware that if one case reaches Palau, that one case they can heal from the COVID?
Are you aware that Palauans have other medical issues rather than just COVID, if it were to be here? So if our borders were completely closed, how are we going to receive help? How are we going to receive help from the medical referral? How are they going to help us with our other problems, with our other health risks, not just considering the COVID?
As we all know, Palau has relied on tourism. Palau's economy has relied on tourism for so long. Do you know of any alternatives that can help other than tourism?
All right, we will now move on to the rebuttal speeches. So first, affirmative rebuttal, 3 minutes.
Opening borders is a safer option. We argue to open the borders implementing the 14-day process, which means that before they enter Palau, they have to go through 14 weeks of quarantine from their originating location, just like the repatriation flights happened. On the 7th, those who came from Guam, they had to quarantine for 14 days in Guam, get tested on the 7th day. If they were to enter Palau, that test would have to be negative. Then, before coming on their final flight, they would have to take the second test on the 14th day, and that test would also have to be negative. This is canceling out the probability of a case coming to Palau. And then when they come back to Palau, they have to go through a process where they quarantine again for 14 days, where they have to get 2 tests, and they both have to become negative. And additional to that, they have to stay at home for 5 days just to ensure for their safety and the safety of our community. We are opening our borders, not opening like no restrictions. We are opening our borders with a quarantine process. And not only this quarantine process ensure the safety, but it also helps us economically. Those who come through the quarantine process, they have to pay for their room and board. And the income that comes through this quarantine process can be used towards giving monetary supplements to those who lost their jobs during this pandemic through programs like WIOA, where they gave jobs to those who lost them through the private sector, and through bills like the CARES and CROSS Act.
You said that Guam had the greatest loss of economy because they had no restrictions for their borders. But with travel bubble, there are restrictions. And Mr. President and other politicians are going to Taiwan to advertise Palau. So many tourists will want to come to Palau. And we need money. Palau needs money. Economy is at loss if we don't open our borders, and we already have so many debts to pay, like the Asian bank that we owe a lot of money to. We need to pay that debt and many other debts that we're getting help from.
We will now move on to the negative rebuttal, 5 minutes.
So, in the case of what you mentioned about the conference numbers that predicted the low probability of a COVID case actually coming in to the island, yes, the numbers were calculated and the probability of cases, yes, they were calculated. However, even in these numbers, they actually predicted the number of flights before we get our first case, and there were calculations based on the fact that we would get a COVID case no matter what. The probability factored that in. Despite the low probability, they still mentioned that it's inevitable that we would get a case here in Palau. You also mentioned people suffering from illnesses and about medical referrals. How would we address these public health issues? Right now in Palau, there are already flights to Taiwan happening monthly, bringing people that need medical treatment to hospitals in Taiwan. In the case of opening borders, you mentioned especially the travel bubble. The definition of this travel bubble in context of what's happening in Palau right now, the travel bubble is not considered an opening of Palau's borders. It's considered an extension of Palau's borders with Taiwan, essentially making Taiwan inside the border of Palau, rather than opening Palau's borders to other countries. You also mentioned Guam. Guam was mentioned as an example of what would happen if we were to have no restrictions, such as the prompt implies. It was not an example of the travel bubble that you mentioned, which, again, the travel bubble is not considered a full opening of the border, such as the prompt suggests. So, to reiterate, our team negates the resolution, arguing that Palau should not implement an open border policy. Consider someone you know that is suffering from diabetes. This person is at high risk with a pre-existing condition. In the event that Palau receives a positive COVID-19 case and the virus is able to spread, even with the majority of adults vaccinated, this vaccine does not fully stop these adults from being carriers and spreading the virus. That means that while they are protected, this person can catch COVID-19 and become severely ill or even die upon exposure. Imagine how terrible it would be to lose someone to an illness that was completely preventable. As we've seen, it's evident that the opening of borders during a pandemic poses tremendous health risks due to Palau's lack of proper preparedness and the uncertainty of Palau's safety. In addition, any outbreak that comes as a result of the removal of travel restrictions will be virtually unstoppable, regardless of low probability, worsening both health conditions and the nation's economic situation as a result of lockdowns in response to the COVID outbreak. For these reasons, it is clear that the government should not implement an open border policy, even in the form of a travel bubble. We argue that an open border policy is not in Palau's best interest and that it will be more detrimental than continuing our current strategy. Additionally, there is absolutely no guarantee that opening borders is safe, stable, or reasonable. Even in the case of a travel bubble, there's no guarantee that this bubble will remain stable and prevent us from having a COVID outbreak. Any sort of issue that arises as a result will completely reverse any intention to benefit Palau. In the end, we firmly reject the resolution due to the risks it poses and for the ultimate reason of protecting the lives of our people. Thank you.
We yield our time.
All right, thank you. And now we will move to the second affirmative rebuttal.
If the use of the closing of borders and no use of a well-prepared and well-monitored travel bubble was not an option, how will we help our economy and community in its call for essential workers? How will we help those who need medical attention from expertise outside of Palau? You said that the travel bubble is fragile, but how can that be a fact if it hasn't been done yet?
Okay, so once again, I want to refer to the points from the 2019 statistics pointed out from the U.S. Department of Interiors. Before Palau was able to attract 100,000 people, 900,000 to be exact, but then now with this, there's been a huge loss in Palau's tourism industries, which is 20%. And then as of 2020, it was expected to actually grow for 30%, but then it dropped by 51%. And then for 2021, it's expected to lose a total of 89%. Huge numbers and huge deals to do for our GDP. As to jobs, of course, there will be closed jobs, 3,128 to be exact. I repeat, 3,128. With less jobs, there's a huge possibility for people to commit crimes, and proven by research paper done by Anthony Escanero. Poverty, the mother of crime, leads people to lust and desire for unavailable needs and wants. You guys focused on Taiwan, but you guys focused on Guam, sorry, excuse me. But let's focus on Taiwan instead. They were able to contain the COVID cases that happened in their homelands and cure their people. You stated that if we just create a travel bubble, it's not opening our borders, it's just extending our borders. But if we were to extend our borders, isn't it opening our borders to be bigger with Taiwan? So technically, yes, we are opening our borders.
So I would just like to be clear that the travel bubble is not the same thing as the process that I stated earlier. The travel bubble is the 8 days process where they quarantine in Taiwan, they take a PCR test before they get on the plane, and they come here. And they only stay for a maximum of 8 days in Palau. But with the other process, which is a totally different thing, they stay for 2 weeks in another country, they have to have 2 negative tests, and they have to take another 2 weeks and additional 5 days, and they have to take a two more tests, and they have to be negative. We argued to open our borders using either the travel bubble or this other quarantine process. We are not arguing to open them indefinitely. We are arguing for the safety of our people. Thank you.
Thank you, debaters. Ladies and gentlemen, that will conclude the final championship round. And now we give 10 minutes to the judges while they work their scores. So it's a tie. So we'll give the judges 5 minutes to deliberate and come with a consensus.
Okay, everyone, so we had an extensive conversation outside, and it was hotly debated, we'll say that much. All of the teams did exceedingly well. I'm very impressed by what everyone was able to put together today and the presentations that were done, but ultimately it does have to be a winner. We took a vote, and what we decided is that the most fair way would be to award 1 additional point to the winning team. We did decide that the negative team was prevailing. They ultimately received a score of 30, and the affirmative team received 29.
So I just want to say it was really, really hard. to judge this last debate. Like Mike was saying, we had to break a tie, and it was a hot debate outside, and they were both very strong arguments, so it literally went down to point by point, technical points by technical points. So we talked about citing sources, we talked about rebuttals and readily being able to rebut a point and answering a question back. So it went down to very nitty-gritty technical points because you guys were both so good in getting your points and stating your arguments. So I would just like to say, wow, awesome job by both teams, as well as for the other teams, Pala High School and Belao Murekney School. The topics are very real, day-to-day issues that we're facing as a country. So it was, and I tell you, most of your points and your arguments are way, way smarter than most of us adult arguments and what we're discussing in meetings in terms of this issue. So I just want to say congratulations, and you guys made me really think. After I've worked 8 hours, I had to sit here and really think hard because you guys are super smart. Good job, congratulations to everybody. All the teams were absolutely awesome. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say, as a fellow youth, I am proud of all of you, and what you were discussing tonight are actual real issues. Actually, this morning at the Capitol, I was attending the press conference, and the President spent 45 minutes talking about your last topic, the COVID and COVID-related issues. So I'm proud of all of you, and I feel really bad for the team, but don't feel bad. I actually lost a debate contest when I was a senior in high school, and there's one unwritten rule of debate that I learned back then, and when you're debating, don't ask a question that you don't know the answer for. And that's just something I want to share, and thank you and good luck on your future studies and whatever you plan to do.
So I think debate is an amazing activity for people to be doing in high school. I did a whole bunch of it all throughout my career, and it's one of the reasons why I do what I do now and why I like my job. I encourage you all to continue to do activities like this, whether or not it's debate specific or in general public speaking. Public speaking is incredibly difficult. It's terrifying. It's especially hard to do in front of your peers, your parents, titans of the community like we have here today. That's an intimidating thing to do, and to get up there, especially when you get flustered, especially when you're having to maybe present a position or an opinion that you don't even necessarily agree with, that's a very challenging thing, and it's also very good for you. Being able to argue both sides of a point, which is what you had to be able to do today, requires a lot of other skills that even if you don't decide to be a lawyer like me, you can use in a lot of other ways. Doing research, actively arguing a point, and being able to view it from multiple different positions is an invaluable skill. That's what you're learning here today, and it will serve you well going forward, regardless of whether you continue in debate or do something totally different. I think that's amazing. It helps, and really one of my favorite things about what we're doing today is the sheer volume of people in this room. The entire community is out here today supporting you all, and that's amazing. It really bodes well not only for what's happening in this room, but for Palau's future. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and congratulations to everybody that participated, winners and otherwise.
Thank you. And this next part is a bit impromptu, but I'm going to ask Mr. President to come up here and give the championship award and say something about tonight.
First of all, I didn't fall asleep. It was really researched and a great debate by all teams. And I can imagine, Jennifer, when we were in high school, I don't think we could do this. And I'm just impressed. And so keep up the good work, keep on trying new experiences, and don't be afraid to stand up for what you believe.
So can I ask the representative of Pelao Madakngay School to come up and get their award? Okay, thank you. Now I am going to ask the representative of Palau High School, the Palau High School debaters to come up here. They get to take home $100 tonight. Okay, thank you. Now, our runner-up, Vicente High School. Thank you. Now, I ask Erica Memutilal. Now, the champions of tonight's debate will get to go back to their school with bragging rights and this wonderful recycled class trophy. So, Palau Mission Academy. Sulang Mr. President, telak di mo angitra teacher Fuana from Vicente to say a short prayer before we go back home.
Let's pray. So Father, we come before you tonight and we thank you for a wonderful evening that it's not only a debate, but we come together as Palau and to cheer our children and to recognize that they are our leaders, our future leaders, and this is just shaping and molding them to be the leaders that we hope and pray that they will be. We ask that you just bless each family that was represented here and bless each school and bless everyone. We give you thanks and praise for this evening, and we want to glorify your name. It is only with you that wisdom and knowledge is what we need and seek. We give you thanks and we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, everybody. That concludes tonight's event. Thank you, churches, for your service.